Okay, so I want to talk more about the city I want to build, and I want to talk about why this city would be a good city for you to live in. I'm going to kind of go over why some different groups of people might find the city appealing. Okay, so I talked about kind of a lot about the city yesterday. I'm going to go a little bit more over about the city today, a little bit more about the layout of the city, things like that. So, um, the it's a megalopolis. I think I mentioned that. I'm not sure if maybe people. It has multiple downtowns, right? So you know how like New York City has like really like three or four downtowns. It's gonna have multiple downtowns, some of which are kind of far away from each other, but it'll be like one continuous urban stretch. Like Guangzhou. Like if you look at the geography of Guangzhou, that would be a good example of what the city. What I kind of mean is quite a few different cities kind of laid out. Not quite like New York City, because New York City, like the downtowns are very close to each other, and they're not like clearly distinguished downtowns. The city's gonna have like clearly distinguished different kind of downtowns, right? But they're like to where like you would think of them as different cities, but it's one big metro. If that kind of makes sense. Anyways, so the main downtown. This is where the business capital of the world is gonna be, and the political capital of the world is going to be in this main downtown. So this is where we have like the World Stock Exchange at the most favorable rates too. Um, the main World Stock Exchange, hopefully, because it'll be at the most favorable rates because it'll be the most international city. So Global Corp headquarters, main office. So I want to make the whole world into one big corporation and then have it headquartered in this downtown, right? So I'll have like the Wall Street equivalent kind of sort of deal. Um, this is where the Imperial Court will hold public events in this downtown. Um, this is where the World Supreme Court will have their chambers at. It's where like local city government will be based out of. Um, I want to build the world's largest cathedral, the Third Temple complex, like mosque complex. So a big religious building that we can kind of have the world's top religious leaders give like religious processions at, and then we can have them filmed, and then like they can go on TV and stuff, and then people can watch them on TV, and then this way I feel like it can kind of like centralize religion, and people can kind of hear religious like sermons from or whatever from like the highest religious leaders as opposed to maybe more local religious leaders, which I feel like maybe aren't as educational. I don't know. And this downtown will be an international location, but it'll also be a very westernized location where people are very commonly speaking English, right? Um, so in this downtown, yeah, this downtown in general that I'm talking about here is going to be like an international location, but a very westernized location where people are pretty much English is definitely the language you're going to be hearing, right? Um, so there's the business area that's kind of divided into a few different sections, right? There's like a business area, there's a political area, there's an education dense area where there's a lot of like research projects into AI, physics, chemistry, biomedical stuff, engineering. There's a lot of museums in this area. There's some like nice colleges, some really high end college, like Ivy League colleges in this area. And there's a really large library. I want to build the world's largest library in this area. And then we could also in the main downtown. I want there to be like an upscale entertainment and food district, right? So where there could be, um, I want there to be like a yacht club, a food court. Uh, Hopefully, I want to see if we can fit a theme park into downtown. We'll see if that works. I think that might end up just being in the Citadel, but I do want like an upscale like entertainment kind of district, food district, tourist district. And I want that to be very close to the arts district, which has like museums, film, theater, fine arts, things like that. Museums has a Broadway kind of equivalent, and also has a Hollywood. I don't like the name Hollywood, so it's gonna be Hollywin Boulevard, and the Hollywin Boulevard hopefully will divide the entertainment and art district. Um, and uh, hopefully, I do want a nightlife shopping slash tourist district too. That's in a similar area to the entertainment and art district. Um, and then there's the Citadel district. Well, there's the Citadel district, which I want to build the world's tallest building. Right, I talked about this. I want to build the world's tallest building with multiple towers, things like that, so that an entire city basically is in one district. Right, so hopefully it's like a super upscale district, and it will be like a semi-private district, uh, and it can have certain parts of it will be, but they'll have like malls, and it'll be an incredibly densely populated district where you can find basically everything that you would find in the entire city in one small area, in one building, right? And then this will be the private business and political capital. So you have like a public kind of space for the business political capital, and then there's also a private space probably in the Citadel. And then there's also probably going to be like a private royal district where there'll be like private residences, and then that'll also be private space for the business and political capital. And there's also, I want to have there be a floating district. So it's like a big boat basically that's just floating free float. Well, it's like docked, right? But it's floating in you know, the middle of the city, and it has like a hospital, it has schools, it has offices, it has like, restaurants, it has everything anyone would want in this one kind of district. So hopefully the logistics might be a little difficult. I think this can all work out. I really, really think this can all work out, especially if we can use modern technologies, right? Like Neuralink and stuff like that. So that's the main downtown. Now I want to go over, there's like a midtown. See how like New York has a midtown? I want to make a midtown equivalent. So I want in this midtown equivalent, it'll be about a 5-minute drive away, maybe 7-minute drive away. About the same distance from downtown Manhattan to midtown Manhattan. Pretty close, right? So it's going to be a highly ethnically diverse place where we're going to bring most of people that are like immigrating to this city too. So it's going to be the biggest downtown by far. It's going to be the biggest downtown. It's going to be bigger than the main downtown, but it's probably not going to be as upscale. It's going to be a little bit, the zoning's not going to be as strict. So like the layout's not going to be as like strictly organized and things like that. And although I think it'll still have like a strictly organized layout in the way that you have different ethnic enclaves in different areas of kind of downtown. But I think that it's going to have like a highly diverse activities are going to happen. This is the biggest area it's the biggest downtown, most likely. And so it's going to have the most going on. But I haven't laid that one out as much because it's a little more free form, So, but let me talk about, there's a second city. So you know how there's like Minneapolis, St. Paul. So I want a St. Paul equivalent for this city. This way we can reduce the cost of living in the second city. But if it's like a 20-minute drive away from the main city, it's still very close to the main city, but the cost of living, can be dropped quite a bit just because it's away from the main city. So it's like, so that's one way I want to kind of lower the cost of living in the city, is by having a second city sort of deal, like a St. Paul to the Minneapolis. And this way, this city, probably a lot of people would think of it as like more livable. The taxes would be a little bit lower. The cost of living would generally just be a little bit lower. It would be a little bit less ethnic than the main downtown, which people might find a little more, like, especially if they're westernized, they might find that to be a little bit more tolerable. And there'd be more strict zoning in this area. It'd probably be like a little bit more working class, blue collar. It would have one central downtown as opposed to divided downtowns like the main city would. And that's about it. So then there's a third kind of city equivalent, which you could think of as like the Philadelphia to New York City, or like the Milwaukee to Chicago, right? Where it's like, It's like a city. It's like an hour away, maybe. It's about an hour away, something like that. And it's you know, a large city, uh, very large city. Probably one central downtown again. But again, like the cost of living could be lower in the city, and it'd be a little more quiet. The traffic would go down. So by making like more than one downtown, we can lower the cost of living while still. It's gonna have high speed rail, so there can be high speed rail connecting everything in the city. So even though it's an hour drive away, it's only gonna be like a 15 minute, 5 minute, maybe even high speed rail trip, right? So, and the city's gonna have excellent public transportation. That's one of the things I really want to do. Is we're gonna use Neuralink to get rid of all the crime, basically, and then the city is going to have excellent public transportation because there's not going to be crime, and we can, you know, how big the city is. We're going to be able to have a really good public transportation system, I think, and so yeah, this is kind of my plan to keep the cost of living down in the city, keep the taxes lower in the city, keep the traffic a little bit lower in the city, things like that. And then I'm going to go over the last kinds of bits here. So I do want another downtown. So the city's located in a valley, a raised up valley surrounded by mountains. So up in the mountains, there's going to be another downtown. That's probably going to be more posh and upscale, maybe artsier, maybe more liberal, kind of more like Boston or San Francisco, kind of something like that. And it's going to be kind of like a medical tech research, climatology kind of hub. And it'll have kind of 4 seasons weather. And it'll probably be rain a lot there, be like very green, kind of like Seattle or Portland or something like that, you know. It might snow sometimes, I'm not sure. Trying to figure out all the specifics here and all that. And then there's also going to be another downtown. So the city's located on a raised up valley surrounded by mountains. And at the bottom of those mountains, there's beaches that surround the island, right? And on the Florida side, the east facing side of the island, there's going to be another downtown where there's going to be a lot of casinos at, and it's going to be like a tourist kind of hub, and it's going to be, you know, have like a yacht club, and it's going to have like a large downtown kind of right there on the water. That should be pretty nice, kind of be similar-ish maybe to Miami or Las Vegas. These probably maybe bigger cities than, hopefully the city can be as big as those downtowns, but a little skeptical. But then there's also be a lot of suburbs, like Hampton's kind of equivalent. I kind of want to make some really nice suburbs, right? And I want, you know, trying to make a variety of suburbs with diverse living and tax options, and diverse, like, that can accommodate a lot of different people who have like different incomes and things like that, right? And so there's gonna be like a lot of ethnic neighborhoods. Potentially, there might be some suburbs that are a little more ethnic, but most of the ethnic people probably are gonna be in Midtown, right? And so you have like a French Quarter, a Latin Quarter, like a little Tokyo, a little Chinatown. This probably be in the main, like the neighborhoods kind of surrounding Midtown. You know, the large downtown that I was talking about earlier. Probably kind of ethnic kind of areas, the kind of neighborhoods that surround it. And I want to talk about how I want this city to have like a healthy nightlife culture. So I want to try to use Neuralink to kind of, because like a lot of countries, a lot of places, like even if you go to like Western Europe or even Central Europe, or pretty much anywhere in Europe really, or you go to like South or Central America, like they don't seem to have as like unhealthy of a relationship with like nightlife as we do, and nightlife is seen as like just a legitimate like thing that people do for fun. People just go to a club just to dance for fun. And I think that I kind of want to, you know, try to get back to that. And so I want to try to have like this healthy nightlife culture that's in the city, because it's in the South, it's in Florida, you know, that's kind of the thing there. And I also want to, I talked about, so yeah. I really want to try to lower the cost of dockage space. I think dockage space is like way more expensive than it should be. And I think that we could really lower the cost of dockage space, which I think would encourage vacationers, and it would encourage people who wanted a lower, like they wanted to live in the city but didn't want to spend as much money. Dockage space is a much cheaper option. Living on a boat is generally much cheaper than living in a house. And so I think by making lots of dockage space, we can, you know, have a lot more people live in the city that, you know, maybe couldn't afford, you know, a house or something, or a bigger kind of living environment. So I really want to try to make sure that we lower the taxes in the rural places. Like I think that New England, if you look at New England on a map, hardly anyone lives in rural New England because the taxes are so high. Like people don't live in rural New York because their taxes are so high. And that's one problem I think with New York City, that even if you go to New Jersey, the taxes are like a little bit lower, but they're still really high even in rural areas. And so I want, like in the city, to have like more reasonable competitive tax rates in rural areas that attract people to live kind of in more rural areas, because that's one thing I think that New England does wrong and that Florida does right, and that's why Florida has, been growing in population, at least in partly because they have competitive prices for rural areas in terms of like tax rates. So that's what I want to make sure, is that the city doesn't have like overly high taxes in rural areas. So I think that'll be really good for a lot of different people. So yeah, I want it to have, it's going to have lots of immigration, but it has to be legal immigration. You know what I mean? It's got to be legal immigration. It's going to, and it's got to be done the right way. The immigrants, they can't just, I want to keep the immigration to like certain parts of the main downtown, the midtown, right? Midtown, which is not, I guess, the main downtown, but kind of the main downtown. It's not the political business downtown, but it's the biggest downtown. And so a lot of the, kind of more ethnic people are kind of going to be there. So if people don't, like, if they want to kind of be around kind of ethnic people that are from other countries, they can be, but it might not be overwhelming. Because I think, like, if you're an American, you don't want to if you're anyone, you don't want to you might not want to constantly be around people from other countries, right? And so it could be, so I want to be able to integrate immigrants into also a system where, people can be, tolerate the immigration. So I think I've done a good job of that. I think that this is going to go well. So hopefully, I want to talk a little bit more about. So I really want to kind of reinvent Hollywood. So I want to bring kind of the main film industry to this new city and have a really structured, organized kind of film industry that goes on there. And then in California and LA, there can be kind of more of like an independent film market that people can kind of do on their own, and that kind of be kind of how that goes. So Hollywood, I want to make Hollywood Boulevard, and that's where kind of that, because I don't like the name Hollywood, Hollywood. But yeah, and so yeah, I'm not totally sure, and we can have red carpet events in the city too, in this kind of area of Hollywood Boulevard, or maybe in the Citadel too. You could also do red carpet events. But yeah, and another thing is that since the city's hopefully going to be built like after we kind of do this economic revolution with AI, then we can have like really nice architecture in the city. And so I've been posting kind of some of the architecture I want in the city. I posted kind of that kind of a while ago. I'll show you guys kind of some more of the architecture that I want in the city. But a lot of the architecture, like kind of, like you can find in Scotland, or you can find in, Europe, I think, has very nice architecture. So a lot of the suburbs of the city are going to have, like very nice architecture, like kind of similar to what you might find in Europe and things like that. So I think that a lot of people that live maybe in Europe might really like the architecture and the urban planning that's going to happen in the city, because it's going to have really like excellent urban planning, hopefully. It's going to have canals throughout the city. So, how like Venice has like canals throughout the city. This city is going to be, it's an island city. It's going to be like a series of islands, and a lot of the islands are going to have canals like throughout the islands and stuff. So there's going to be lots and lots of dockage space. So hopefully the city can have like a really big maritime culture, as I talked about. I'm really into maritime culture. I think cities with maritime culture tend to be a lot more productive. They tend to make, I don't know, their economies tend to be a lot better. I don't know what it is about cities with maritime culture. They tend to be more international. They tend to be more productive. And so I want to promote maritime culture, so the canals is going to be one thing with that. So yeah, I'm not exactly too sure what else to say at this point, but if anyone has any more questions, that would be, but yeah.